students, and welcome to the second part of our lesson on complex sentences. Now, this is the second part, so if you haven't watched the first video, please make sure to watch that one first to get a foundation in complex sentences before you watch this one. Let's start with a warm-up. What do you remember about the punctuation rule from last lesson? I have 3 sentences here, and I'd like you to rewrite these complex sentences by switching the clauses. What do I mean by switching the clauses? Well, if the independent clause is first and the dependent clause is second, I'd like you to switch those 2 clauses so that the dependent clause is first and the independent clause is second. Notice that this will change your punctuation. So take a look at whether the sentence needs a comma or doesn't need a comma. Please pause the video while you do this. I'm going to give you the answers right now. Here are the answers. So because is begins a dependent clause, so we're going to add a comma here. In number 2, the dependent clause has switched to be second in the sentence, so we don't need a comma here. And in number 3, the dependent clause comes first. We notice because we have a subordinator at the beginning, and therefore we're going to put a comma between the 2 clauses. I hope that helped you remember a little bit about how we punctuate complex sentences, and that's very important. Now let's get started by talking about the focus of this lesson, which is subordinators. We're going to talk about a few different subordinators in this lesson. Remember that subordinators are the words that connect the 2 clauses, and they're the words that show the relationship between the 2 clauses. The first ones we'll look at are cause and effect subordinators that show cause and effect. Because and since are 2 subordinators that give an expected result. This is a result that we are not surprised by. It's logical, it makes sense. That's normal to do it that way. Even though and although, on the other hand, give an unexpected result. So this means that the result is surprising, right? It's not normal, right? Let's look at some examples. Because Lucy wasn't feeling well, she stayed home from school. Is it logical that Lucy stayed home from school if she's not feeling well? Yeah, that makes sense, right? That's normal to do. So we can have both because or since in the same sentence, just like this, and it doesn't change the meaning. Notice that the dependent clause is the cause. So the clause that begins with because is going to be our cause. And then the other independent clause is going to be the expected result. And that's the same for since. Now let's look at even though and although. Even though Lucy wasn't feeling well, she went to school. So here we have the same cause. Lucy wasn't feeling well. But notice that the result, she went to school, is unexpected. Usually if you're not feeling well, you should stay home. But Lucy did something that was surprising or unexpected. In other words, we might go, oh my gosh, she did? So even though and although, again, have the same meaning, we can use them interchangeably, right? Because and since have the same meaning. But remember that the 2 sets of subordinators give different types of results. So here I've got the rule for you again, and I'd like you to finish the sentences that I have here using a clause that is either an expected result or an unexpected result. Please write down your answers and pause the video so you have time to think. I'm going to give you some sample answers in just a moment. Okay, so I hope that you have your answers down. I'm going to give you some sample answers, but feel free to email me your answers and I'll check them for you to see if they're right too. Number 1, since I have a lot of homework, I'm going to stay home. That's logical. That's reasonable. That's what normal people do. Number 2, I'm going to bed early because I'm tired. Again, that makes sense. If you're tired, go to bed, right? Number 3, although I have a lot of homework, I'm going to go out with my friends. Again, remember that man going, oh my gosh, right? It's surprising, right? If you have a lot of homework, you should stay home, but you're doing something different than expected. Number 4, I'm going to play soccer even though I'm tired. Once again, kind of unexpected or surprising that you would play soccer even though you're tired. All right, students. So we have one more set of subordinators, and these show direct contrast. You might remember that word contrast. What does contrast mean? Differences, right? So these subordinators are great for contrast paragraphs and contrast essays when you want to talk about two subjects and how they are different from each other. Our first set is while and whereas. Both of these subordinators show two opposite ideas. Remember that opposite means completely different, like black and white, cold and hot, right? Tall and short, okay? So opposites. While California is very hot, Alaska is very cold. We could say the same thing using whereas. Whereas California is very hot, Alaska is very cold. What are the two subjects we're comparing? California and Alaska. And what are the two opposite ideas? Hot and cold. So here we're using while and whereas to show two opposite ideas about the temperatures of these states. I've got a couple more sentences for you. I'd like you to finish them in a way that makes sense to you. Make sure it has a subject and a verb, but also make sure that the two ideas in the sentence are opposites. You can pause the video while you do this. Okay, here are the answers, or my answers. Yours might be similar. My brother is quite shy while my sister is very outgoing. The two opposite ideas here are shy and outgoing. Dogs are very friendly, whereas cats are mean, right? So again, the opposite ideas are friendly and mean, right? Now, many students say, wow, Jessica, you talk about dogs and cats a lot, and it seems like you don't like cats. But honestly, look at this cat. They're so mean. Everybody knows it. All right, a little bit more practice for you guys. For these, I don't have any answers. So if you would like your answers checked, you can email them to me and I would be happy to check them for you. You can pause the video while you do this, but I also just want to say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.